So Caroline Kim is the Director of Development of the Crow Museum of Asian Art of the University of Texas at Dallas. And I'm so thankful that you said yes to speaking. Thank you. When we spoke earlier this year, she chose the theme simplicity because it really resonated with her personal life and her career, and also the collection that's on view until April next year, right? So it's the first time that a collection is on show for a whole year. So without further ado, Caroline Kim, y'all. I don't know if you can see my face that large.
So I'm first of all very honored and flattered to be here. I'm flattered to see so many people here who have made their to promote it also is what helps make Dallas so great. And it is very much in the ethos actually of the Crow Museum of Asian Art, because our founders, Trammell Sr. and Margaret, that was his tenet as a businessman. It was to marry business and art together. He did not think that you could have one without the other. And you see it evidenced in their buildings around the world where you see art. You see art everywhere now, right? You see it in public buildings. And he was very much a leader and pioneer in that movement. Because as we just said, and as is in the manifesto, everyone is creative, and it's very important, right, to continue to have that in areas. So, and he wanted to show that Dallas is an international cosmopolitan city, and I think that we've done a very good job here of doing that. So, that said, I'd like for us to take a minute. I'm literally 1 minute. I've had a lot of coffee, I don't know about you. And we're just gonna sit and we're gonna have a little meditative moment. So I'm gonna start the timer, have this chance to get centered, put yourself in that mode and think about who we are today and how we've shown up for ourselves and for each other. And take 1 minute to that first bell wasn't mine, but that was just, I'm taking that as a sign. A minute feels longer than you think at times. So we at the Crow, we start most of our meetings out by taking at least 1 or 2 minutes to sit and center and put ourselves together so that we take that moment to recognize that we're all connected in the same room. And I fully admit that I'm not a meditator. I try. It's a difficult practice, isn't it? It's again, it's a simple thought of just sitting in the quiet or sitting with yourself for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 45 minutes plus, and I'm not successful at it yet. But I appreciate the process of it. So, and it really ties into what we're talking about, simplicity. My favorite thing too here is this was all originally in different fonts, but then when it transferred over, it stripped it all down. So it looks about the same. So now we're going to get a little interactive. You can take 1 more minute with me, and if you can scan that QR code, or if you can't see it in the back, if you go to menti.com and put in that number, which is 7728-6117, in case you can't see it. We're going to ask the question in 1 word. You can do multiple answers. What does simplicity mean to you? What evokes a thought in your mind? And we're going to do a little word cloud with it. Has everyone had a chance to scan it a bit? Yeah? No? Okay. Should we go over to the word cloud now and see what happens? Oh, that's fun. Calm, peace. Bare bones. That's a good one. We'll take another minute or another few seconds or so. Openness, breath, organized. Yikes. Pure, no clutter, thought, breathable, naked. That's my daughter. She's a simple gal. Clarity, calm. We keep kind of coming down to clean and calm and peace and uncomplicated, right? The simplicity in that. Okay, that's fun. All right, interesting. Do you feel like what you were thinking was kind of aligning with a lot of others in the room? For the most part? There's a little bit here and there. Focus, nature, unit. Cereal, no milk. Who wants to fess up to that? I'm just kidding. Grounded, minimalism, that comes up. Okay, thank you guys for participating in that. I think that's fun. What do you see?
Me.
No comment. Also, it's pretty big, so it means that at least one other person. That's something to think about. Well, it's complicated, right? As Nikki was saying too. Like, what does this word mean to us? And I can only come here. I can only come here and relate and connect with you guys just as myself and who I am. So that's what I'd really like to do today, and get to know you and let you get to know me a little bit better. And who I am is the daughter of immigrants, born in New York, raised in Dallas, a member of, obviously the AAPI community, a strong ally of many BIPOC, all the BIPOC communities. All of our communities are allies here, locally and globally, and that really is a huge part of my identity because of where I come from, right? And I think a lot of you can relate to that too, whether as an ally or just a person of color or someone who identifies however you wish to identify, right? And it's important to me to go back to the roots of where we got. Look how cute these. I chose these photos specifically because they look so vintage and 70s, and some of you who are probably in the millennial era or Gen Z, like this is very that one's a Polaroid. It's the original Polaroid. And just full disclosure, that is not actually me in the middle. That's my sister. It's our 1 year. So we're Korean, right? So my parents came from Korea, and it was our 1 year birthday. It's a big deal, right? Everybody comes. You have all this fun stuff. By the time I came around, my picture looked a lot different. It was not nearly so. They were tired. They were tired back by then. We're so happy here. And that is little me crawling in our little New York apartment. My parents had immigrated here, and then this is when we moved to Dallas. And so that's my dad looking very cool. I remember those aviator glasses so well. But my parents, our story is so alike from so many other people who've come to this country, right? If you look at my parents' histories, it's a saga, it's an epic, what they've gone through, being in a country that had experienced a lot of different wars, a lot of different turmoil, occupation. My dad was born in 1936, and he was born, which means he was born in Northern Korea when it was just one Korea. So my mother was born in Seoul sometime later, so she was a city girl, but he grew up in a more rural area, and they were well off, but they were still in a rural area. They had his parents had a copper and a brass factory. And what happened though was, as he was, when he was young, and when his older sisters were he had older sisters, they were occupied by Japan at the time. So his parents were forced to make things, munitions for They're Japanese occupying forces. And by the time World War II came around, things were not doing much better. So his parents actually sent him and one of his sisters down to Seoul, ostensibly for a wedding, for a family wedding, for the weekend. And my aunt talks about how she remembers asking, why are we packing so many things for just a weekend wedding? It was just trunks of clothes and things, and his parents weren't going, it was just the two of them. They went on that train, they went down to Seoul, stayed with relatives, they never went back. So that was the last time my dad had seen his parents. He was 11. Now, what I was doing when I was 11 was living in the suburbs of North Dallas, begging my parents to take me to the mall every weekend, complaining about piano lessons, and just sort of, being a regular kid. And that was what my parents were striving for. By the time they came to New York, to the United States, they were just in that immigrant, right, sort of passage of just coming with nothing. It was the same story. No matter who they were or who their parents were, who their family was, back in the old country, they all came here. It wasn't necessarily, on a ship, it was on Pan Am Airlines. But they came in and they turned into the exact same people, right, as thousands and thousands of other immigrants who just came here because they wanted a better life. They wanted a more simple life. They wanted something better for their kids, right? That's what we all want. This will be the first part of where I start to cry. It's a safe space, I know. So that word simplicity comes up right there, right? They just wanted a simple life. They wanted the opportunities for their children that they just weren't going to get if they stayed there. So this is sort of the little homage to them. And who knew that these little girls were going to grow up living just miles away from where they grew up. We went away and then we came back. And growing up, it was that immigrant and still, a lot of the same experiences that I think a lot of other first generation kids know, right? Which is you have to excel, we've sacrificed a lot. There are certain things that you're just not going to have a lot of ownership or agency in. It's just going to go this way. And when I was in college, it was just sort of, no, I was going to go to law school. I wanted to go to law school too. It wasn't the problem, that was just going to be the path, right? But I wanted to study art history in undergrad at least, and that was a big deal with my parents, with my mom especially. Some of you may be wondering, why would you even be talking about what you're majoring in college with your parents? That's your choice. That's not quite exactly how it worked in my family, at least. But I said, look, I'm going to go to graduate school, but I want to do this. This is just what I'm interested in, and it'll be okay. Well, it turns out I got a job at a law firm. No, I just don't know. That's the only thing. And so there was this impasse of not really understanding each other, but recognizing where we had come from. And I was just really bucking against that. That wasn't going to be what I was going to do. And so, what she did say was, well, you're on your own. And so that's fair. And that was the right thing to tell a smart mouth little girl who kept wanting to go to the mall every weekend. And this is back in the day, so I started to look for jobs. This is back in the day in the newspaper. You actually look for jobs in the classified ads. And so I'm going to the way, 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 way back of the newspaper, and there's this little ad for a job at the Dallas Museum of Art. I thought, sure, okay, I don't know what this means. So like assistant, I can assist, I guess. And my typewriter, it was still, had a typewriter. It wasn't that old now that I think about it, but, and I wrote and I applied for this job and I heard back a few days later because that was snail mail. Actually, I had to put it in the mailbox and wait for a reply. And I got a call back and said, we've already filled this position, but I'm wondering if you're interested in another position. It's in the development office. I said, that sounds wonderful. What is development? And I quickly found out that it was the perfect place for me to be, because to work in a nonprofit in the development field is to marry business with the mission, with the people, with the community. And that is exactly where I'm supposed to be. So when you think about, if somebody asks, what does a development person do? And someone says, well, you raise money. And really my answer is, my job is to connect people with our mission. And when you do that, I always have a purpose. Every day, I know what my purpose is. Every day I feel good about it. and every day I know that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So my mother is still not convinced, but that's all right. That's right, we'll get her soon. So, does anybody know what wabi-sabi is? Somebody want to just say what it is?
Beauty of imperfection.
Beauty of the imperfection, that's right, right? It's a very, very Japanese aesthetic, right? It's in Asian, a lot of cultures, right? It's about finding and appreciating the imperfections everywhere. It's letting the water flow where it should flow, you know, and letting it erode where it goes, and then just enjoying that. The Zen garden is this reflective, meditative, contemplative practice of seeking that sort of perfection, seeking that design, but knowing that the gravel will just still do what it wants to do to a certain extent. Japanese aesthetic is really, really at the core a lot of times, right, of simplicity and what we think simplicity is. Their lifestyle, the philosophy is about stripping things down. Every room should have every element of, you know, of nature, right? Wood, clay, stone, water. There's something about that reminds you of what we have in nature and bringing inside the home. And this is just my dream room. It is very neutral. It speaks to some people and doesn't speak to others. I understand that. But what I love about this picture is that you really see the simplicity of the pottery too, which, as Nikki was saying, and what the exhibition is about, is the craftsmanship of ceramics. Japan is known for its ceramics, right? Centuries and centuries of famous potters and kilns, ancient kilns that have come all the way from the high of the volcano, and they put the kiln in the bottom, and it goes 650 feet or what have you into this volcanic ash. And so these are centuries old techniques that are still used today, and that's what we see in the exhibition. That's what is celebrated. That's what's appreciated in this Japanese aesthetic. Does anybody know what this represents?
It's kintsugi.
Kintsugi, that's right, that's right. So kintsugi, who knew that? You can raise your hand. That's more hands than before. So this is the art of taking something that has been broken, and rather than getting rid of it, rather than throwing it away, you repair it. And not only do you repair it, but you tend to do it with this gold inlay, right? And so you make it something new, you make it even more beautiful, you appreciate what it was originally, and then you make it something, and you bring its functionality and its personality back to life. Kami is a Japanese term for like spirit. And the philosophy is that everything has a spirit. Everything has some sort of soul. They were the originators of reduce, reuse, recycle. Very much about putting thought into every single object that you have, and not just casting it aside when you're done with it or when it doesn't quite suit your needs. So here's a beautiful way of respecting and honoring what it was before, acknowledging that it has a spirit, and continuing to live with it. And I think about this a lot myself. I think about kintsugi a lot when I feel like I'm just broken. I've fallen, and I've fallen into pieces. And how am I going to get myself back together? And what am I going to bedazzle myself with to get it back together? And sometimes that's a really good conversation with a good friend. That's a hug from my daughter. It's me even saying what I need to say to somebody, because if somebody's hurt my feelings, I need to be able to express to that person what's wrong. And that's a sense of repair for myself, and that's a way for somebody else to look at me differently too. So this is 2018. So I've been in development for about 20 years now. I've had the opportunity to live and work in some amazing institutions. I started at the Dallas Museum of Art, and then I moved to Portland, Oregon, and was at the Art Museum there. And then I moved to Nashville, was at the Frist Museum there. And then we had a baby, and I didn't do anything except just stare at this baby for a year, just looking at each other. And then I had an opportunity to come back to Dallas and work at the Crow Museum of Asian Art. Now, I had worked in other museums that were entirely encyclopedic. Okay, so what's different about the Crow? We're completely focused on Asian art collection. And that was an interesting thing for me to think about. I didn't think that would be very challenging. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't feel at the time that was something important for me. which is interesting. But I quickly rose to the opportunity and realized like how limitless it is to look at things from a certain lens. All right, we don't have boundaries on what defines Asia. We don't have boundaries on what our collection means or how we can interpret it. So I love that. But what I didn't love was going back to work after having a baby. And I found the work-life balance challenging, to say the least. It was honestly, 2018, for the year and a half, about a year and a half, it was the lowest moment in my life. And I don't know, I'm sure some of you can relate to this. I was not doing well. I felt like I wasn't doing anything well. I didn't know what success looked like. I felt like I had gone from, just working, right? Working 110% of my job, 110% of my job, and then I went to 10% of staring at this baby, and then all of a sudden I had to change that. And it was a struggle. It was really hard. My husband was traveling for his work. There were days when I wouldn't see my daughter because I would take her to my parents' house in the morning so I could get to work, and then she'd be sleeping by the time I get home, and then I'd have to leave work early in the morning, and I wouldn't see her the next day. And it just made me quickly realize, like, what am I doing? I'm not identifying with anything right now. My life is not simple. My life is extremely complicated. And then you have that tug of, what are you complaining about? You have a great life, right? There are so many other people. Look at what your parents were doing. They were struggling with nothing. We had a little bodega in the East Village, and we're living in a tiny apartment. What are you complaining about? And that is that brokenness, right? That's the thing that we can put on ourselves all the time. It's like, what is this monkey mind of doubt and putting yourself down when you're trying to do something? Where is that definition of success? So it felt like I was doing amazing things. I was so proud to be a part of this institution, to do things like bringing the Tibetan monks every year to Dallas to put together the Stand Mandala. And I was putting 60, 70, 80 hours a week into it. But I was not putting any hours into my laundry, for sure. It was, this is what I came home to all the time. The laundry was just picking, we can all relate, I'm sure. Picking the socks and picking the things out of the laundry, and it's just always there. And this little baby just wondering who I am at times. And it was a really tough year, and it was really tough for me to sort of have to admit to myself that I thought I could do this. I just assumed I could do all of this, and I really can't. I'm not doing it very well. Turns out probably you're doing better than you realize, right? And then, does anybody remember 2020? Something significant happened? Truly, raise your hand if you were impacted severely in 2020. If there should be like 100% hands up right now. That was something, wasn't it? That was a moment in my life that we all remember for different things, and I think we all carry, 99% of us carry some sort of trauma related to that, right? That we're still dealing with in some way. It was, for me, interestingly enough, a wake-up call in many different ways. It made me realize that I had something else to focus on, and this is what happened. She wasn't in school, I wasn't leaving the house, and every morning she would say, "Mommy, leaving? Mommy, leaving?" I'm like, "No, I'm not leaving, I'm here." "Home day, is today a home day?" I'm like, "Today is not a home day, but you are gonna watch Frozen for the next 5 hours. But it brought things back, right? And it really, I remember thinking so clearly, don't forget this moment, don't forget this. Like, you've really found out what life is about, okay? Stop worrying about work-life balance, stop worrying about what people think, stop worrying about what success looks like. Get back down to the basics. It's really simple, Caroline. How stupid can you be, right? Well, something happened. This is a calendar, this is a week in like June 2020. It didn't work out. I felt that feeling of euphoria and elation in the midst of tragedy, right, for about maybe 3 weeks or so. And then all of a sudden we all found out what Zoom and Teams were. There were so many seminars and webinars, and we were all so anxious to create digital content, find new ways to engage and connect, and and this and that, and then we found out that we didn't have to schedule in like drive times for meetings. You could just go from one meeting to another in your pajamas, admittedly, but you're still sitting in that same chair, right, for hours at a time. And so watching Frozen went from 5 hours to 8 hours, and watching my child grow up in the way that I wanted to started to go out the window again. And it was again just coming back down to that conceit, like, whoa, what's going to bring me out of this? What's going to bring me out? I can't believe, ever since 2020, fall of 2020. Does anybody know what that middle symbol is? For all the math nerds. That's right. It is not simple, is not easy. It took me 40 some odd years to get to this, finally to realize simple does not always mean easy. We were killing ourselves, right? For the best of intentions, right? Trying to connect with our audience, trying to help people, and it's just a simple project, right? It's really easy, guys. We can do this. It's a simple online video. It's a simple letter. It's a simple this or that. All of that takes energy and effort and time and resource, right? There's so many steps that go into what we think is simple, what we think is easy. And it took me just the right amount of time to get to this point, so where I could start to think, is this simple? Maybe. Is it easy? No. Can we acknowledge that it's not going to be easy? It's not the same thing all the time. And that really helped to inform the decisions that I started to make, not just at work, but in my personal life as well. Just what does it mean? It's a simple play date. It's a simple act of saying I love you. How many other ways can we do this? What is it coming down to? The core of, we just want to connect. I need to tell somebody that I care about them. I need to create some productive work days. What's that going to look like today? What's that going to look like this week? Stop making it look like that hideous calendar, because that was not productive. That was not productive, and that was not joy making. So here's a simple origami crane. It's from one piece of paper. It's so simple, right? It's one ingredient. It's just one piece of paper. This is also one piece of paper. This is from a Finnish artist. One piece of paper, more than 6,000 folds and bends to create this. This is his pattern. Isn't that incredible? It's the same thing, right? It's just one piece of paper, guys. If you can do this, surely you can do this. How many times have you been in a meeting or in a conversation where somebody's like describing this, but really what they're looking for is this? And it's hard to, how do you stand up for yourself? How do you explain that's not the same? So I found myself weighing all the time, you know, the origami crane in one hand and the samurai in the other hand. Okay, they're both simple, they're both the same ingredient. What's it going to be? What am I going to give to this person, or to give to this project, or give to my daughter today? Is it going to be the crane, or is it going to be this? And they both have value, right? They both are worthy. They both deserve the time and effort it takes to create something beautiful and unique, and something that you can own. But some days are going to be the crane, and some days are not going to be this. So that ties into what we're doing downstairs in the museum with the Mingei movement. If anybody's familiar with the Mingei movement that started in the 20s in Japan, it was a direct, heavy influence based on the arts and crafts movement that was happening in the West. Okay, it was just back to basics. It was back to the simplicity of the potter and the clay. And it was started by Soetsu Yanagi. And it was in response to what they saw as like the industrialization of, you know, mass production of ceramic ware, the mass production of massive kilns, and just sort of churning it out for export, things like that. And they wanted to come back down to the basics. And they wanted to honor who those anonymous artisans were, because they're using timeless techniques. Does anybody, without looking at this, have any sense of how old this is? Don't look down there where it says 20th century. So it's from the 1950s. And Murata, again, was a potter who, in the Mingei movement, who didn't really get the recognition until later in his life. And so it's a sad, tragic story. But what you see here is his consistent efforts to create beautiful pottery that has that Japanese aesthetic of what looks like imperfections of letting the ink stay where it goes, letting the lines, the cuts to make the shape be imperfect, and the glazing using centuries-old techniques from the anonymous artisans that never got their recognition or due before. This very simple oil plate that everybody had, this is from 1700s, maybe late 1700s, 1800s or so. But this is an oil plate. This is what every household had. So minge is the art of, it means Japanese folk art, right? It's the art of finding beauty and aesthetic in everyday objects. Again, surrounding yourself with something that is functional, but also has beauty to it, okay? So, 2 chrysanthemums. Chrysanthemums is incredibly important in Japanese symbolatry. It's symbolic of the Japanese imperial family. It brings in the fall when the chrysanthemums bloom, and so that reminds you about the harvest time. It's harvest time. So when you see people bringing out their chrysanthemum design, that means you know it's fall. That means every household goes through this ritual of putting away all their summer things and bringing in all their fall things, which means changing their lighter weight summer rice paper doors and sliding doors and putting in the more sturdy fall ones. It means putting away your lighter linens and bringing in the heavier ones. It means changing out your plate, your plateware, your stoneware to reflect the fall. Even if it's 90 degrees outside, it happens to be, you still know it's fall because somebody changed. Somebody changed all their glassware and their ceramics to reflect what's going on. That's a very beautiful way of acknowledging who we are in the world and reminding ourselves of our humble beginnings. When do you think this was made? 1700s, you guys, yes, the Edo period. Doesn't it look like it came out of like an Art Deco 1920? What's so beautiful about this, you can barely see on the rim. On the back side, it's opposite. So they made a very conscious artistic effort to switch them out on the back. It's beautiful technique. It's timeless. It's unbelievably contemporary still right now. Lacquer, as I'm sure you may know, it's incredibly difficult to work with because it's toxic. It will burn your skin. It's very difficult to get that smooth line. And yet, here we are with this anonymous artist who wasn't necessarily thinking about what we're going to look at, who's going to look at this in the year 2023, but just creating the most basic design of 2 colors, 1 pattern, and it's still relevant today. I have a love-hate with Marie Kondo. She's the ultimate, right, in this simplicity of the organization of getting your life in order, having your house in order, and just a few simple folds means that you can fit 5 times as much in your drawer. It's so smart. It is. I've tried it, definitely. But I will always go back to that baby in the laundry because that's just my default. It takes a lot to be this simple and organized, right? Simple is not easy. It takes a lot to do this. And Nikki and I were talking about where is Marie Kondo today. And did you know, after her 3rd child, she has abandoned her organization. Thank you, Marie. That makes me feel so much better in a lot of ways. The shelf is strong. But it's a good reminder that we come back to like what's important in your life. Where are you able to put effort in the crane versus the samurai? When does it make sense? Again, everything has value, but I'm so glad to be where I am in my life right now to be able to say no to something, to be able to speak for something, speak for myself, or speak for others. And if somebody says, this is a simple thing, I can say, this is not simple for me, and we'll work something else out. Whether it's at work or whether it's my husband or my child, this is not a simple task. It's a simple task, but it's not an easy task. And it's helped me so much to not feel like there's something I'm doing wrong. What I'm doing is just being very, very truthful to myself, and I think that helps all of this, everyone around me as well, so that we can better connect with each other. So, we're going to do this again. Let's see if the words change. If we have a different feeling. think about all those cute photos of my kid. How many people have children? You know that when they're that little and they're like, puppies. Home, mommy, stay home. And that was a good point for me. That was a good time in my life for me to realize that there's time and place to fill my days. Yeah. So I'm going to write cereal with milk. Control, worth it. Cereal with milk. Thank you. Clearing is a really great word. We still balance. I don't know if balance was out as much before, and that really resonates with me. Not easy. Truth. Life. Revelation. Colors. Too much. Lovely. Chrysanthemum. Naked's still there. Flow is really great. So, for those of you who can stay to see the exhibition, again, this is it's called Japan Form and Function, and it's all from the Geoffrey Montgomery collection. He is a British collector based in Lugano, Switzerland, of all places. He has arguably the largest and most rare collections of Japanese objects outside of Japan. We're so lucky to be able to display it. This is the first time the museum has given an exhibition, given the whole museum to one exhibition. So every single gallery is of his objects. And again, Geoffrey himself, what draws him to these objects is again this beautiful craftsmanship, the anonymous artisanship of it, simplicity of it, the fact that everything has a function, but just because something has a function doesn't mean it can't be beautiful as well. So I hope that we have been able to commune a little bit, and you feel a little bit more something. There's something revelatory within you or something that makes exhibition. I am happy to answer. Thank you. Anyone?
Can you explain kintsugi?
Kintsugi? Yeah, kintsugi. Yeah, so again, the kami, the spirit, if you think that every object has a spirit, especially something that was made with human hands, you don't want to just throw it in the garbage. So if there's a bowl or a plate or something that's broken, if it's enough pieces, you can repair it. So what they do is they melt gold and they reattach them with this gold inlay. So anytime you see an object like that, you know that it's gone through something, and you're still respecting it and you're still able to use it. So that's the beauty of kintsugi, and I think it does apply to a lot of things, a lot of people as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yes?
Have you ever had the opportunity or interest to work in any other fields of the museum studies besides development, like curation or anything like that?
Have I ever thought about working in another department in the museum?
But yeah, basically.
Basically, no. There's a lot of skill sets that I have, and curation, education, public programs, finance, those are not my areas. But I love working closely with all of those departments. You really can't do your job. I can't do my job without working closely with them. So what I love to do is to be able to collaborate and come up with programs together that benefit both the community and the museum and what they're doing. But I thoroughly recognize curators are, talk about creativity, that's a lot of problem solving that I thoroughly admire. And education too, working with the public, and working with children, and working in that way and finding meaningful, relevant ways for everybody who comes into a museum to take away something that they'll think about is an art in itself. Yes?
You mentioned at the beginning that first search in the in the advertising section for the Dallas Museum of Art. What drew you to that? Was it your art? Did you have some type of like really impactful artistic past that guided you to that?
I can't wait to answer this question. What guided me to that ad, and did I have something? Was there a moment? There was absolutely a moment for me when I was maybe in 3rd grade, and we did a school field trip to the Dallas Museum of Art. And Matisse's Flowers and Ivy was on view. And if you know it, it's grand scale. And that was my Ferris Bueller moment with the kaiba. I remember it so well, so vividly. But it was never something that I thought I would really take seriously. Again, I was really studying art history just because I liked it. And I didn't think that I would have an opportunity to go into that kind of career. I didn't know what development was. But when I saw that ad, it said, Dallas Museum of Art, assist. I know those words. Something will come out. But yes, that was my moment. And I'm sure we all have those moments, right? That's why we're here and we're connected to Creative Mornings Dallas. We all have those Ferris Bueller moments. Mariella?
I would like you to tell us more about the curator of the Japanese exhibition that you have now, because I was actually at the opening and he's so interesting, but I want to hear more about him.
Luigi Zenni. This is a 100% Japanese collection and show from a British collector and a Swiss-Italian curator. Luigi is amazing. He speaks a million languages. He learning Japanese amongst them. He just graduated with his master's in Japanese history, Japanese art, and Japanese studies in Zurich. But he's known the collection in Jeffrey for several years and has done a significant amount of research and scholarship on his works. He has just a great passion for these objects and for this time period especially. And so he was really wonderful to work with, because what you want to do, especially for a whole gallery like, or a whole museum like this, you want to kind of group them sort of in different ways. And what he did was to group them, was when you walk through it, you're going from the southernmost part of Japan to the tippy top in Tohoku. So you can literally walk and you can see the transition from the influences of those particular regions. And you can literally see how the colors change, how the materials change, how the designs change, and the meaning and the impact of them. So he's very special. He's in Switzerland right now, and hopefully we'll be coming back. We're planning a symposium next fall, so he'll be a significant part of that. Yes?
So years ago, I came to Museum Week, and we got a tour of the Japanese gardens around the building by the creator. Is this something that you do more often? I would love to come back and do that again.
The Japanese gardens that were around the Trammell Crow Center building were lovely when they were here. So again, when Trammell built this building, which was at one time the largest building, the tallest building in Dallas, again, he built the outdoor area to be this beautiful plaza and pavilion, outdoor pavilion. And in 2019, the building got a makeover, and now it's a more functional space for people to be able to have lunch and what have you. And yes, there is some beautiful spaces of Japanese gardens in Fort Worth.